Welcome to Sailing Avanti. We are Gerard and Jacqueline, sailing our 41-foot monohull Avanti around the world from Cape Town, South Africa. In this episode, we try and figure out what's wrong with our windlass. We hike through 2 national parks and go searching for one of Dominica's famous waterfalls.
This morning we are going for a hike. We're going to Fort Shirley, which is across the bay. There's Fort Shirley, so we're going to have a hike around, and then we should get to a national park on the other side of that little mountain, where we'll go snorkeling. The national park is very well protected, so we can't use our dinghy to get there. We'll use our little feet and we'll show you what there's to see on these beautiful waters of Dominica.
The Waikotobuli hiking trail is a 14-day hike that one could do in Dominica. It starts in the south and goes all the way to the north, past waterfalls over mountains of about 1,400 meters elevation, and even shows you the hot springs. Fort Shirley in Cabriz is the final leg of the multi-day hike.
The Cabriz area has a very long, interesting history that dates back to 3000 BC. In 1493, Christopher Columbus sailed into this bay on his second voyage. The area has seen its fair share of wars and has been home to the Arawaks, Caribs, British and French. So these buildings that you see behind me was actually built with volcanic stone that was found here in the hills, and as well as stones that was brought in from the quarries. But the interesting part is that what they used for cement was actually coral that was boiled down to make a lime mortar and then used to build the buildings. This viewpoint shows us Douglas Bay. A part of this forms part of the national park, which means no boats are allowed to enter.
The majority of Fort Shirley has been restored in a period from 1982 till 1992. But as you can see, some buildings have been left as is, and nature is taking over. We find hordes of crab shells on the hiking trails, which has been victims to birds. We also find some live hermit crabs on the trail as we walk.
After a full day of walking, we never found that reef, and we start making our way back to the boat to start looking at the windlass that broke last week.
I've removed the 12-volt windlass electric motor to see if there's anything wrong with that I could see. Not much of an electrical guy. I've taken off the cover, removed all the brushes. The brushes look absolutely fine. There's no play on the bearings or the shaft, so I can't think that the stator is touching the rotor or anything like that. So it's quite strange. Hopefully just by fiddling around with it, it's still okay. I'm just going to try and test it again by just hooking up the terminals and activating the switch. It still doesn't go. Luckily it's very similar to a car starter motor, so I'll be able to probably take it to an auto electrician to have a look at the motor, see what's wrong. While fiddling around with the windlass motor, I spot 2 large barracudas swimming around the boat. and put the boat hook in the water with its orange point to try and lure them closer. They're quite intrigued and swim closer, but as soon as they see Jackie, they sped off. I'm just busy taking out the brushes. They normally wear down or carboned up, but as you can see, the brushes that come out of these still look very good. So I'll try and take the rotor out and do some resistance checks on the rotor windings. Hopefully I find something small and we can keep on using this one. I've taken out the rotor of the windlass motor now as well, and to my mechanical orientated mind, it all looks good. The bearings looks good, they don't have any play on. The rotor is not touching the stator magnets, so there's no mechanical wear. I start measuring the resistance between the motor windings and find that there's continuity between all the windings. According to my limited electrical knowledge and some advice from shore, this is not the way it's supposed to be. The insulation between the windings have therefore failed, and our motor is not in a repairable state. We will have to therefore replace it.
This morning we are prepped and ready to go find Syndicate Falls. The taxis that go there, or the tour buses, is basically just a taxi that takes you to the entrance, and they're extremely expensive, well, for our South African rands. So we've decided we're going to take a local bus to as close as possible, which is still quite a while away, and then we're going to walk it and see how far it takes us. In American miles, it's about 5 miles to the entrance, and then it's about a 4-hour hike, and hopefully we'll see some waterfalls. The minibus drops us off just off the main road. Up the mountain we go.
A few kilometers into the walk, we start hitchhiking, and the farmer stops and gives us a partial lift up the mountain on the back of his bakkie. Luckily he did, because we drove past some angry looking dogs, and we soon realized we would have to get a stick for some self-defense. This part of the island was very interesting. Farmers walk up every day to the small patch of land that they farm. There's no fencing or housing, as they're not allowed to stay in the area. Some just had some small storage areas, but not nearly as industrialized as South African farming. Mudland crabs are found high up in these mountains, and this one is trying to make sure he doesn't become our dinner.
We made it! Only 15,000 steps to the start of the trail. The actual visitor center is completely shut, but the trail is open, so we're going to start the trail now once the rain stops. Walking in the rainforest means it's raining almost all the time. We've seen pretty birds already, so it's definitely worth it, but it's very far. We decide to have our lunch before we start the trail, and Harald opens a can of tuna that we add to a pasta salad I made that morning. Although we were the only people for miles, this little bird looked like he knew humans and was extremely tame and sat with us throughout lunch. The size of these trees are just enormous. And somewhere up there is the jaca parrot and the sisaroo and all sorts of hummingbirds.
The parrot.
I can't begin to describe how beautiful this trail is, and this landscape. These trees just grow forever. They're so tall and it's so green and lush down here on the floor, on the forest floor. Our guide on the river actually told us that there's still a third of the island that's only been touched by two, Maria and David, the two hurricanes. And it's quite extraordinary to think that that a third of such a quite large island has not been touched by humans, which is actually amazing. And when David did pass through, he left quite devastation, and a lot of the houses were obviously taken down. So what the government did to try and get good, cheap wood for their communities is they actually opened the forests to chop down the big, large trees. And unfortunately, they soon realized that that was affecting the parrots. They had no place to nest and they didn't have any fruit to pick. So they didn't last long. The communities were allowed to use the nature parks for a short while to build new houses. But then the trees had to grow back so that the parrots could nest again. Beautiful Dominica, absolutely magic.
The Dominica Island has one river for every day of the year, so there's 365 rivers on the island. This is one of them, coming from the Syndicate Falls, which we are on our way to.
Astonishingly enough, we were the only people on the nature trail and the walk to the waterfall. And we have to say, it was a lovely change of pace to some of the busier islands that we have visited.
We finish our hike for the day
and start the long walk back to the main road where we need to catch the minibus. Luckily, a farmer picks us up and we avoid walking about 7 kilometers down to the main road. The total cost for the trip ended up to be $10 opposed to $200 if we used a taxi and the car.
Portsmouth town itself is quite run down, and you can see the devastation the hurricanes have left in the past. But we head into town anyway for the market on a Saturday morning to get some fresh veggies before we depart for the BVIs. Wil je niet nog een stuk van doen? Hallo! I bought some tomatoes, cucumbers, carrots, green beans, potatoes, bananas and cabbage.
Before we depart, we always take Blasoppie out of the water. If it's a short trip, we normally tow her behind the boat with the motor removed. But for any longer trips, we hook up a halyard onto her and pull her out of the water, making sure all the water that's inside her drains, and then we put her on the deck. We deflate her and put her in a storage bag and put her in the lazarette or tie her down on the transom depending on the length of our trip.
Today we are heading for the British Virgin Islands. We've just come back from the market. We did some shopping. Saturdays is market day in Dominica, so we went to the market. Very busy. We were there around 7:30 and it was jam-packed already. It's only going to get worse throughout the day. Harald's busy taking down the dinghy, putting it away. We've got about 250 nautical miles to go. 280 depending on how much we need to tack. There's some lovely easterlies that's going to take us there, and days like these, it's Saturday morning, we should get there by around Monday morning. So what I've done is cooked up our dinners and bought some French loaves for lunch. So all the meals are already prepared, and we're expecting some high winds. So I don't have to cook in these high winds. The food's already done. We just need to heat and eat. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, as well as sharing it with your family and friends. We love reading your comments and try and reply to all of them. If you do feel like contributing to the making of these videos, you will also see our Patreon link in the description below. Join us next week as we head to the famous British Virgin Islands and show you places like the baths. We have some family visiting and we do some serious sailing between the islands.